Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Table Talk. I'm your host, Jake Combs, and tonight we have a special video for you. So before we get started, basically what we're doing this week is we're changing things up a little bit. Typically when a game company sends us some items, we film it right away, and then we wait to release the video until any embargo dates have passed. And in some cases, they may send us more than one item. And in those videos, they may have different embargo dates. And so we have to release all of that stuff all at once when we film them like that. But this time we're doing things a little bit differently. So the reason why is because there were several items for Warcry that were sent to us by Games Workshop for the purpose of our videos and our upcoming written review. And basically when we did our original video, those other items had the same embargo date. Now they no longer do. So instead of waiting to have our video release for the second embargo date, what we're going to do instead is we're going to go through, look at the box again, discuss the things that we've learned since the first recording, as well as things that we've learned along the way, and what we're most excited for there. So without further ado, I bring you Warcry Heart of Ghur. Now, like I said, Games Workshop did send this to us for the purpose of this video. Now, obviously, if you were paying attention, we did the previous video, and so that's why the seals are already broken. Now, this box, when it did ship to us, it was not covered in plastic wrap like most of the starter boxes are. Instead, what this had was 4 of those little stickers that basically have to be, the seals themselves have to be broken in order to open the box. Personally, I prefer when they do it that way. That way there's less trash. Less trash means less landfill, all of that. That's good stuff. We try to keep things environmentally conscious as much as possible. And sometimes that can be a little bit hard when you're in a hobby full of plastic, sprues, resin sprues, things like that, things that are harder to recycle. So anytime that we can get away with less trash is a great thing. So I definitely prefer they do it this way. I'm hoping that this is going to be their way forward. I don't know the decision behind it, but it's neither here nor there. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, we have a few different sprues in here. The first thing I want to point out is that there's almost like a cavity right here. And this is something that we noticed last time, obviously. But where most boxes, it's full almost to the top, at least below the lip right here. And this time, it wasn't. And that's, I suspect, because of this piece right here. If you look at it, you can see that, it's about the height, halfway to my thumb. So that's roughly like 1.5 inches, 2 inches almost. And so you need definitely a lot of clearance there. So, for this thing to actually sit without any issue, they would either have to redesign the sprue so that way it only took up one side instead of kind of being in the middle. And then you could do like a half sprue on the other side, maybe a couple half sprues, something like that. Or maybe like a special character sprue. Now, one thing that I did find out is that this is a full new edition. So when we did our first recording, that part was not clear. We just knew that this was a new starter, and that was it. And since then, some more information's come out. We've done a little bit more reading, found out, yes, this is a full new edition, and we are very excited to get started. Now, like most Warcry warband or Warcry boxes, the new warbands that come in it are all chaos themed. Specifically, we have the Rottweiler. I believe it's Rottweiler Creed. Let me see if I can pick up the box and read it from underneath. Let's see, yeah, Rottweiler Creed. So that's this sprue right here. A ton of detail on the sprue. I mean, we have, rotting cloaks. We have stitched together with bone. We have reeds throughout, woven in. Just a ton of detail on these guys. They look fantastic. I am so excited to actually build and paint these guys. And even better is that the date of filming, it was actually announced that there's going to be a Rottweiler Creed model as the Warhammer Store free model of the month. So, if you are planning on picking up this box set, I highly recommend you getting down to your local Warhammer shop and grabbing one of those. I now need to find the time to actually get over there because it's not very close to me. But I'm definitely excited for that, and it is a unique model that is not found in this box whatsoever. So even more imperative for me to get my butt down there and try to pick one up. Hopefully they don't run out before I get that chance. But the Rottweiler Creed, of the two warbands, just for aesthetic alone, is by far my favorite. We haven't looked enough at their cards to determine which one is the better. But again, aesthetic only, Rottweiler Creed is definitely the favorite. And then we have the Horns of Hatchet. Now, if I remember correctly, Hatchet is more of a dwarven or chaos dwarven god. I believe kind of involved with ironworking and things like that. So not sure what all these human chaos worshippers are doing following that god specifically. I suspect that in the fluff in the new manual, we'll have a little bit more of that information, maybe explain what's going on there. And what I'm hoping this means is that we should start seeing maybe Chaos Dwarfs coming back, since we haven't seen them since the Warhammer Fantasy Battles days. And so that has me really excited because I loved those models back in the day. They weren't necessarily the most detailed or most exciting. I typically went with just, normal Chaos Warriors and full Chaos Army. And the Chaos Dwarves themselves, though, kind of were like the Chaos equivalent to Halflings. A group that is kind of more tongue-in-cheek, kind of goofy looking, if you ask me, and a lot of personality. And so I'm hoping that we get to see some of that come back. I'm honestly surprised we have yet to see Halflings. At least I've never seen Halflings in Age of Sigmar. They might be there. I haven't read any of the battle tomes for Cities of Sigmar or anything like that. So it's quite possible that they are in there, but not certain. Now, the Horns of Hatchet, they still have a good amount of detail, but most of that detail is in the ironwork itself and the exposed muscles. But comparatively, there's not nearly as much detail on these models compared to the Rottweiler Creed. They're still great looking models. I really like the kind of bowl aesthetic to them, but their overall scheme just feels too similar to the Iron Golems to me. So it kind of feels like, maybe this is kind of meant to be just like the original starter, which was, Iron Golems versus Untamed Beasts. You have the metalworking obsessed warband versus, the nature obsessed warband. And, that's very much what we have here. Assuming that my memory is correct on who Hatchet is, of course. But again, once we actually get into the rulebook and look at the fluff and read it, we'll have a much better understanding. Excuse me. At least I hope. Now, so we've already shown this sprue. Now, this terrain, out of all of the boxes of terrain that they've done for Age of Sigmar, for Warcry, at least in the starters, this one is probably my favorite by far. You have this untamed wild area that alone the environment is going to be deadly, and the fact that their new release structure for Warcry is that basically every 3 months we're going to get a new starter with a new set of terrain meant for all of this terrain to work together. So that way you can have a much bigger board by the end, and potentially even play bigger games. Maybe do like a big 2v2 or something like that, occupying a much more space with a lot more terrain involved. Definitely really curious to see what that's going to look like in the end. Very excited. Now for this sprue, there's actually 2 of it. This is where we got our rope bridges with kind of bamboo tied together, and then some claws used to anchor the bridge in place, or the ladder in place, depending on what these might be. I believe they're bridges though, from the images I've seen. A lot of kind of bamboo barricades and vines and stuff. And this area itself, like we have some stone that is very reminiscent of what we used to see in Lustria with the Seraphon, their overall aesthetic. And that's because one of their temple ships, or whatever they're called, basically crashed into this area and kind of brought the wilds to life around them to protect what was held inside. And so all of these groups are now kind of converging on this spot, more or less to ransack that temple ship. And so I'm hoping that we get at a lot more narrative aspects to this series of Warcry. We definitely have updated rules for all of the warbands. That's actually going to be coming soon in the compendium. So that means that any of the Tome of Champions or the army books, none of those really apply anymore as far as the warband rules. But where they still apply is that they did have unique missions and things like that you could do, and there's simply not enough room for the new compendium to house all of that. So we definitely lost some of those along the way. And so that means that if you have those books still, you can still play those and still get that aspect out of them. So it's not a total loss for those books, but as far as rules for the warbands, the compendium is going to be very different, and have all of that updated for every warband. So here's our next sprue. This one's kind of got a lot of wood pieces, as well as some big bone. We kind of got the snout of the skull with some teeth. Definitely a ton of detail here. Like I said, I am in love with this terrain. So much fun stuff in here. Can't wait to get started, especially with the new contrast paints that we just got. Very excited to get started with those. So really looking forward to getting this set built. Now, what I'm thinking about doing, I haven't decided yet, especially considering that we have the Rottweiler Creed in here, and they're very Nurgle-like as far as their overall aesthetic. I've never really liked the feculent Gnarl Maw model, and the artist Mendel, I can't remember his first name, I think it's Tyler, had posted in one of the social media groups that I'm in for painting that his version of the Gnarl Maw. And looking at these trees, I mean, these look perfect for that as well. So I'm considering modifying one of these to become my feculent Gnarl Maw to go with my Maggotkin. Definitely going to be real easy to do with just the overall aesthetic, fit right in with the Rottweiler Creed. And so it's definitely something I'm considering doing, but I'm definitely gonna have to look into how each of the trees are meant to come together, because like this one right here, we do kind of have a big gaping hole, but I don't know if something else is supposed to go there that would affect how these pieces came together. If it doesn't, and that's just basically kind of a hole in there for like an owl could sit in or something, then I'll definitely be able to use that as the big gaping mouth on the Gnarl Maw, and put some teeth in there and get it built up. So once we get past all the sprues, we do have our insert. The first side is the artwork from the box, and then we just have the general Warcry. We have our board. Now, anyone that orders this new, this is going to be sealed in plastic, obviously. Mine is obviously open just because of the fact that we did the original filming before, and we're going over it again. Great looking board. I love that the landscape itself is very different than what we had before. And then we have our token sheet. We have our ruler. We have all of our cards. Set those aside. We have our assembly guide for everything, including the terrain, all of our warbands. Some of the warbands do have multiple options with assembly. So that means that if you are somebody that likes to have all the options available and doesn't want to use magnets, that using this warband, you're gonna have to get multiple copies of the warband itself in order to do that. Otherwise, you're gonna want to do some sort of magnetization in order to actually set that up right. Now, we do have the warband tome, Rotten Ruin, and then our core rulebook. Again, this is an updated rulebook because this is the second edition of Warcry. So we're going to take a look at those here in just a sec. And then underneath the flaps, we have our bag of dice. And then our bag of bases. So just leave those in there, set this aside. All right, so with Rotten Ruin, in here we have the more of the overall lore or fluff, however you want to call it, of this skirmish between these two warbands, and a little bit about the area itself, and specifically why they hate each other. And then we go into the rules specifically for these warbands. It's even got copies of their cards in here. And as well as special terrain rules. And this is actually one of my favorite right here, with the kind of big serpentine or snake-like skeleton, and then the terrain kind of growing around it and being built around that. So definitely some really cool stuff in here. Then we go into our actual campaign, where we have our specific quests for both of these warbands, as well as an actual full campaign arc and campaign tree. So depending on like which one you go, so like if you're playing Rottweiler Creed, you know, do you have victory? Then you go into bitter enemies, and then if Horns of Hatchet are victorious, then you go to desperate ritual. Likewise for the Horns of Hatchet, you know, if they are victorious, they go into bitter enemies. Otherwise, they go into Let It Burn if the Rottweiler Creed win. So just kind of an interesting campaign tree with how they have it set up. You know, it's very much kind of one half is, you know, your warband, and you determine which way to go based on which of the two wins. So I mean, right here, we essentially have 3 guaranteed battles in this campaign between the two warbands, and then the special rules and twists for each one. As well, and then towards the end we also have the background tables for both warbands. And then in the new core rulebook, going over the fluff before we get into the actual rules. So the actual rules happen on about page 56, and get started. Go through there, you know, explains how to make your warband, you know, the different actions, reactions in the game. So, you know, you have your 4 sets of cards, you know, one for the terrain, one for your battle plan, one for your victory conditions, and then a twist to kind of tweak things differently. And, you know, that's still very much in line with what we had in first edition. And so definitely interested to see, you know, what really is going to differ between the two editions. You know, we still have the same dice rolling system as far as, you know, singles, quads, doubles, triples. So, you know, you have, you know, that whole system is still there in place. No changes there as far as how it works. Now, I suspect that some of the abilities are going to be different. You know, maybe it's going to be modified specifically for this environment as far as this area of Ghur, instead of being focused inside the 8 points, with it being in Ghur and this specific area. I suspect that some of the warbands are going to have different abilities that they can call on that either they couldn't before, or, you know, some of their abilities have more or less been stripped away as they've left the 8 points. And this is entirely assumptions. You know, I have not read enough of the new book to, you know, understand if that is the case or not. But, and I suspect more of that's really going to be in the compendium. So, you know, if you are an existing Warcry player and you do pick up this box, you're going to get a great set as far as the models are concerned, the terrain especially. You know, you'll get the new rule book. But if you're using past warbands, you are going to need to get the compendium, so that way all your warbands are brought up to speed. But let's go ahead and look at those models. All right, so here's the sprue for the Rottweiler Creed. So So like I was saying, just a ton of detail, definitely very nature, kind of swampy themed. I love the cloaks overall. I definitely see a lot of potential there. Could easily, kind of kit bash them with some Cadians to make some Tanith first and only models. And if I am able to get a second box of these, I definitely will be doing just that. The Horns of Hatchet, definitely some cool stuff there. But like I said, aesthetically, they are very similar, other than just kind of the bowl part of their aesthetic, to the Iron Golems, and less beefy there. This is the first of our terrain sprues. So this is the hole I was talking about. Looking at the pictures in the assembly instructions, it does look like a branch comes out of here, but that branch does not affect any of the rest of the terrain as far as like the platforms and stuff. So I might just leave that off and do the mouth thing that I was thinking of doing to make the Feculent Gnarlmaw. Then we'll go ahead and set that aside. Here's the next sprue. So this is the one with the kind of snake or serpent skeleton and platforms, and a lot more branches and things like that. So this is that big piece of the big skull that's going to hang from the tree. This is kind of I believe the bottom of the skull. And I believe these two pieces are the sides of the skull. Again, tons and tons of detail here. So this is the sprue that we have duplicates of. So we have a total of 4 of these bridges and a bunch of these barricades. So set both of those aside. And then the final sprue. And I would love to find out what this belonged to. I mean, this spinal column went with something massive. I'm guessing was tied to the skull that's hanging from the tree. But I do hope that eventually we do see some of these massive monsters in some form of model, maybe either through Forge World just because of the size. But I really hope that we start to see stuff like that come out, especially with the focus of all of these battles being in Ghur. All right, so now that we're done looking at the models, that's all we had really to go over as far as this box is concerned. What we intend to do is go through, do a full written review here in the coming weeks. Ideally, the day that this video is released, we're hoping to have the article released as well, but I don't think we're going to be able to get that out in time, just because of the fact that at the time of the filming the second video, these items are up for preview, and on Saturday, which is going to be today as far as when this video is released, this box is available for pre-order. So I don't think that I'll have enough time to learn the rules, compare the rules to the previous edition in that time frame, because that only gives me about 5 days to do it. But never say never. Crazier things have definitely happened. So we're definitely going to get in there, do everything we can to do that. But again, I want to say thank you to Games Workshop for sharing this with us. We would definitely appreciate it, and are looking forward to see what Warcry has in store for us next. At the very least, I know it's going to be some awesome terrain, and with the history of what they've done so far, I'm willing to bet that we're going to get some awesome new warbands. I do know that there are warbands from each Grand Alliance that is featured in the area as far as like the overall map is concerned. Like we had some of the Gloomspike Gits as far as a listed warband that existed Now, I suspect that we're going to get at least one warband, at least one new warband for each alliance. Probably probably a couple of each Grand Alliance, but mostly going to be Chaos themed. So definitely some things to look out for, and keep your eye to the Warhammer community site for more news there. But that is it for tonight. Thank you guys all for watching, and I hope you have yourselves a great weekend.